Y'all, I am Crafty Hope, and welcome to my Finding the Words art journal for March. Now, this is a series that I started just to challenge myself, and instead of using traditional prompts like a color or a word or an art material, I decided to try to start inspiring myself with the sentiments I have in my stash. I've got this little instant coffee container with different sentiments or words or just found words mostly that I've clipped out of things. And to start this, I am pulling out 3 different ones and choosing the one that inspires me the most. I did put freeze frames on some of these so you can get a better look at them. You can go back and look. But the one that I ended up deciding on is that fortune cookie that I received that said, "You discover treasures where others see nothing unusual." And you'll see I'll pull that out. These 3 were really hard for me for some reason. That larger quote one from Roald Dahl, while I love him, I just felt like it was too big for the page I was going to work on. The other one said something about swinging doors, and I felt like that one I was going to have to add doors, and I wasn't feeling that. But this one mentioned treasures, and I felt like it spoke to me in general. I mean, it's part of the reason I saved it as a fortune cookie, because I am somebody that loves to go out and find treasures in thrift stores or on the ground or parking lots or out in the woods and nature. So I was like, okay, we're going to run with that. And that's kind of where I started with, was the idea of nature. So I used some twisted citron, how do you say it? Distress crayon to do a little bit of scribbling in the background, and then took some walnut stain distress oxide and sprayed that on this book page that's part of this journal I made. Once I had those 2 things down, I was like, well, I kind of want to combine them somehow. So I'm using a wet paintbrush along with a little bit of fluid matte medium to kind of smear things, to smear that green around, to smear the brown a little bit. I'm going to play with this just a little bit more. I think I'm even going to add some water. And y'all, it is like horrible baby poop colors. I'm like, what was I thinking? And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna roll with it. I'm gonna figure it out. I pulled in this little bit of, I've used a bunch lately of sewing pattern paper. I don't know. I think it's taking up a bunch of room in my scrap bin, and so I'm just kind of throwing it at all of these journals, because I'm like, I need to get it out of here. And I love it. I love that when you put it down with fluid medium like this, it really just adds a little bit of age and color to the page. And it, depending on how you use it, can also add texture. So if you crinkle it up, you get that actual texture. But depending on the writing or the lines and all of that, you can get some visual texture from it as well, which I was hoping to get from this. But the the pieces I had didn't have much more than just like a single line on them. And I was like, ugh, I want more. I want to break this up just a bit more. So I stopped after putting that one down. I especially put that one down over where some of the original book page was showing, and that kind of helped darken it up. And I was like, okay, I need something that's a little bit busier. And then I remembered this collage paper from Tim Holtz I have in my stash. So I went and grabbed it, tore off a section of the front of that, and had this beautiful cicada on it, along with all kinds of text and yumminess. And I was like, okay, yes, this is what I want. So I'm gonna put it down in the same manner with the fluid matte medium. And you can see as well that distress oxide, is getting picked up. I was hoping it to prevent that by using some of the fluid medium when I smeared that stuff around, but y'all, I didn't cover all of it with that fluid medium. So yeah, I'm getting some more of that bit of brown, which is fine. It gives a grunginess that I really enjoy on my pages, but I'm going to struggle with that for part of this art journal page. So I started to dry that thinking I was done, but I could see the line, like the straight exact line where I had started that, and I was like, no, I need I need to switch that up. So I'm going to add one more little piece of this collage paper on there. And I don't know if you can tell, but I was avoiding, there was like a beetle on one of those. I didn't really care for the beetle. And so I was trying to keep from putting that beetle on my page. And I didn't want to put both parts of the cicada down, because I just liked the single one. So thinking about the sentiment, which is what's supposed to be inspiring me, I was thinking about treasures, the word treasures that's on there. And a lot of times treasures can be something sparkly and gold. And so I was like, okay, how can I get something like kind of gold and treasure related on here? And I was like, oh, what about some embossing powder? So I went and grabbed some random whatchamacallit, stamps, just rubber stamps and a embossing ink pad, and just stamped randomly. I can't see what I stamped on there, and I knew that the ones I grabbed, I didn't want them like fully on there. I just wanted like hints of that on there. And in my embossing powders, I saw that I had this mix of embossing powders. Y'all, I think it's some of the iced enamels that I ended up mixing up. And I really wish I had tested this out, because it's not my favorite thing. I am glad, though, that I grabbed some Ranger Gold embossing powder in addition that I'm going to put on after I clean this up. So with embossing powders, it's use this stamp ink that's kind of sticky and the powder sticks to it. And then when you heat it up, that powder kind of melts into kind of like a raised plastic embossed area. So, here's the gold that I'm going to put down to hopefully fill in any of the areas that mix didn't get on. And I found that the parts where I could see that gold in particular were my favorite parts. I probably should have just put that gold down and not gone for the unknown mix. But it's my art journal. It's about playing and discovering and using the things I have. So yeah, that's what I did. And y'all are going to get to see me heat this up. You can kind of see it changing as it goes, but I was finding that my page was bubbling just a little from the heat. Being consistently on it, it was like that the tissue paper, the collage paper, and the sewing pattern paper were kind of raising up off of the surface. So I wasn't super happy with that embossing. I didn't like the glitteriness of some of that, and there's some like white embossing powder. Like I said, I think it's the iced enamels in there. But I was like, again, keep rolling, keep seeing what we can do with this. So I added, I needed to brighten this up a little. It needed just a pop of something. And I thought about making some big white marks on here. And I was like, no, I just need something random. So I grabbed some white acrylic paint and a fan brush and just splattered that on there, and of course dried it. And then I was like, all right, next thing I need is some rust. Because one of my favorite things to find when I'm trying to find treasures is anything rusty. I know there are a lot other assemblage and mixed media artists that feel that with me. So, so I'm decided to add some rust to this treasure page, and I'm using some golden fluid acrylic in Quadacro Nickel Azo Gold. You can no longer get this color, but I believe there is one called Azo Gold that you can get that is very, very, very similar, at least on the bottle, because I've seen it in the craft store, and it looks a lot like this color. So, anyway, you can see I'm just adding little touches of it around my page in different like strengths. Like in some places it's really dark, in some places it's just kind of a touch of it. And once that was done, I kept feeling like I needed something. I needed something bold and I don't know, that would really be eye-catching, but also a place for the eye to rest. Does that make sense? So I feel like I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to this, but I really love this Americana shade of craft paint that's called Sea Glass, and I have found, for me, it's like a neutral. So I put some big blobs of it around on my page and was like, yep, that's exactly what this needed to kind of calm the chaos and give you a place to rest. And I was like, okay, how are we going to bring in the sentiment that is what this page is about? So I was like, okay, first thing we're going to do is ink this up so it looks less like a brand new fortune out of a fortune cookie. And y'all, it's not brand new. I've probably had that fortune for at least 3 years. So um, I wanted just a touch more texture in here. And for me, a lot of times that is going to be some fabric. And I actually pulled out another bin of fabric trying to look for something, but in my head all along I knew that I wanted this, which y'all, it is some cheap drop. It's not super cheap, but it is a big sheet of drop cloth from Harbor Freight, I think, that my husband had that I confiscated some time ago. And you can see that piece in particular has been through a little bit of a rust bath. But I tore it down just slightly larger than my fortune cookie fortune, and I'm trying to fray all those edges. One of the lines was like super straight where I'd cut it, so I'm like clipping little bits of it off so that it looked more organic. It's like a little bit of a cheat for it. Um, and then I decided to kind of stabilize all of it by using my Uhu glue stick to stick down the fortune onto the fabric. And from there, I want to do some stitching. I kept trying to think of something else I could add to this or stitch onto it. And I thought about doing a button, but my previous page, the page just on the other side of it that I did the other day, has a button on it. And I was like, I don't want to be a one trick pony that everything has buttons and sea glass paint on it. So I was like, instead, why don't I just do some French knots? So I found I had this variegated thread in my stash. Somehow I do not have any thread that is exactly just the color of that sea glass. But I found I had this variegated that was very close. So I'm putting that on a needle and tying that up. And y'all got to see I'm struggling a little bit. I pricked my finger on something the other day and I've got a band-aid, and y'all, that's my like texting and like swiping on Instagram finger. It's my thumb, that my right thumb. And so it's making everything a little bit harder to have that thumb covered up with the band-aid. Even pulling that thread there. I was like, ow. So, anyway, I'm gonna do just a few little French knots on here. More texture also helps bring that color not off the page and onto this focal that is the sentiment. And I think you can kind of tell too on there that I didn't cover up much of that cicada on there. I wanted that to kind of be there. That's one of those things I do like to find that I see as a treasure. I've picked up cicada bodies and wings and all of that many, many times. In different forms, like with the wings and with just the shell of the cicadas that are stuck on trees. So I was like, that's kind of a nod to some of the other things that I enjoy finding. So yeah, I'm definitely letting that sentiment inspire me here. So like I said, I've put down a few little French knots. I'm sorry I didn't talk y'all through it. I don't think I had enough time really to share that portion of it. And I like that this was variegated, like that it's like darker on the left side and goes to lighter all the way across the right. So it gives a little bit more interest as well to this. And I futzed with a little bit about the placement because I didn't really want it right in the center, but because this again is a small page, it it was going to hang off one side or the other, so I'm going to end up placing it towards the left so it hangs off the outside of it. I didn't want it in the crease to make it hard to open and close this page. So once I've got my French knot all done, I also couldn't decide how many knots I wanted. So yeah, that was a whole thing. So here I've pulled out my Beacon 3-in-1 and I started to glue it down, but then I changed my mind and was like, what I really want is a little bit more of that paint, because once I put down my sentiment, some of those spots are going to be covered up that I had put down. So I was like, okay, just a little bit more of this luscious color of paint. And then I'm going to go ahead and use that 3-in-1 glue and stick my sentiment down. Once I get it down, it's going the lack of the bright gold that I wanted is going to bother me. I'm like, no, I need this to still have some really solid gold color to it. So, yeah, I'm going to get that down and look at it and be like, okay, I'm done. You'll see I'm like moving things around. I'm like, yeah, that's done. That's fine. I really liked how where that hung up lined up with that other page that has the stamps. I'll link to that one along with the previous one. So yeah. So I'm going to dry this real quick and decide that what I want to do to add that bright gold in there is to use my Uniball Signo gold gel pen. And I'm just going to like do some really sketchy circles around these blobs. This is something I do with various things. I go around my painty blobs that I tend to put on things. So I'm going to do that and then call this page done. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if it has inspired you to maybe start with a sentiment and give me a thumbs up. I will see y'all later. Thanks for watching. Bye.